Good evening. My name is Chinemerem Joseph. Welcome to this edition of You and the Economy. Now, the story of the oil palm subsector in Nigeria is a perfect example of fluctuating fortunes, the type often told in a grass-to-grass tale. At independence in 1960, Nigeria was the largest exporter of oil palm to the global market. Today, however, the country's fortunes in that market have plummeted so shockingly that Nigeria is now an importer of palm oil, the core product of oil palm crop, as well as its other derivatives. It takes no rocket science to imagine that the sheer magnitude of the adverse impact of this disturbing trend on the nation's foreign reserves has been so bad, especially given Nigeria's huge population and the millions of stomachs that are fed daily with food that require palm oil to prepare or consume. Taking a cue from the exhortation from President Muhammadu Buhari that for Nigeria to attain food security, she must grow what she eats and eat what she grows, and also mindful of the compelling need to drastically reduce and progressively eliminate the intense pressure that unabated importation of oil palm and its derivatives has continued to exert on Nigeria's foreign reserves. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, intervened in that sector to restore its glorious era. This is more so as the Apex Bank believes that Nigeria has comparative advantage in the production of oil palm and its derivatives, which she could leverage on to regain her erstwhile enviable status as the world's foremost exporter of the vital commodity. In this edition of You and the Economy, we flag off a mini-series that examines the key measures taken by the CBN along with some stakeholders to revamp the oil palm sector and restore it to its former prominence, the significant achievements recorded in the implementation of those measures, and what the future has in stock for the sector. Happy viewing.
We hope that with time and through this program of the CBN, sensitizing and investment in the sector, investment by the small, big and medium players along the line, then we can meet that demand and will increase the total volumes that is available.
With CBN intervention, the players in the oil palm industry, both the big scale, the medium scale and the small scale players, are now able to increase production to the point that we now have 1.2 million tons of oil palm in the country.
Viewed from any perspective, it is clear and indisputable that things are looking up again in the once beleaguered oil palm subsector of the Nigerian economy. The new wind of change blowing across and galvanizing a sector that had suffered from decades of stagnation and decline has offered strong reassurance that the dream of achieving increased output of oil palm and restoring the glory of the subsector is not a mirage after all. Indeed, the signposts of this impressive turnaround are as conspicuous as they are remarkable. Most manifest are the deliberate efforts made to provide expansive swaths of land for the cultivation of plantations of oil palm trees, the increased tempo at which high-yield seeds are being developed and provided to farmers, a much broader and vastly improved access to concessionary loans at single-digit interest rates to both large-scale and smallholder farmers and integrated oil mill companies which own oil palm plantations, and, as noted earlier, the unyielding resolve to bring back the glory days of the subsector. As the preceding narrative implies, all these uplifting features had not always been the signposts of the sector since it went into decline in the aftermath of the oil boom era of the 1970s. Nigeria certainly had good reasons to worry about the declining fortunes of our oil palm sector. As output nosedived and population grew in exponential proportions, triggering a sustained cycle of persistently huge demands for both its core product, palm oil, and its derivatives, Nigeria soon began to contend with a huge demand deficit which stood at 1.25 million metric tons annually by 2019. As always, and given the inelastic demand for the product, importation, largely through dumping of cheap oil palm products into Nigeria and via smuggling, a destructive act of economic sabotage, reared their ugly heads, thus impacting Nigeria's foreign reserve adversely. Although importation of palm declined from an all-time high of 506,000 metric tons in 2014 to 302,000 metric tons in 2017, Nigeria, by that record, still expended about $500 million on the importation of palm oil annually. Expectedly, the Central Bank of Nigeria would not fold its arms and allow this situation to endure. In collaboration with other stakeholders, the CBN spearheaded the move to salvage the oil palm sector. This deliberate initiative was besides its decision to place importation of palm oil on the foreign exchange exclusion list. The outstanding results of the initiative, which gained foothold in 2019, are the signposts of the new face of the sector that have been demonstrated by some of the images you have been seeing in the opening of this edition of the program.
The oil palm sector in Nigeria before the CBN intervention was in a sorry state. The farmers could not access funding. The borders were porous. And the Research Institute too was not able to do anything. Because without the farmers, the institute is not doing much. And because of lack of funding from government, the institute was almost comatose.
The CBN wants to restore palm oil as a major commodity in the country because it's one major commodity that is imported. So the CBN wants to, first of all, cut out that aspect of the fact that you can conserve foreign exchange instead of spending your money to go and buy palm oil. Why don't you grow it in the country?
The oil palm sector traditionally is a sector that consumes huge amount of foreign exchange. When you import the various CPO, any of the variants from oil palm. We wanted to bring back the glory days. We believe that as a central bank, we need to be able to intervene to ensure that, we conserve the foreign exchange we use to import oil palm traditionally that will have been cultivated. Also provide jobs to our people. With the population growing, we need jobs. And that's why we decided to, go into oil palm cultivation and funding it.
Much as it was deeply worried and concerned by the adverse impact that the unabated importation of palm oil, the first product that is extracted when bunches of ripe oil palm harvested from palm trees are processed in the oil mill, continued to have on the foreign reserves of the country, the CBN chose to be methodical and painstaking in its intervention in the sector. As a result, the Apex Bank shunned the common habit of taking hasty decisions and precipitate actions which is associated with confronting dire situations and which almost always turns out to be counterproductive. Accordingly, as a prelude to its intervention, the Apex Bank defined the objectives of the actions it shall take so that it could use those goals as benchmark to drive the implementation of its intervention measures and to conduct periodic evaluation of their efficacy.
What we've done, working with all the stakeholders in the ecosystem, the state governments, the research institutes, and private sector players, is look at, in a 5-year period, how can we, bridge this gap so that importation is near zero and we can indeed begin to export the excess that with 3 objectives that we'll set out. Number 1, which is jobs, bring in more jobs. Number two, conserve foreign exchange, which we, are in dire need of. Not only conserve, but begin to earn. How can we begin to export? Not only the oil palm itself that is milled, but also the variants that oil palm is used for. And number three, get the smallholder farmers quite busy, improve their practices and also improve productivity.
To increase the output of a crop in geometric proportions and thus close vast gaps in the demand for the products obtained from processing it, it is imperative that access must first be provided to large expanses of land on which to cultivate the crop extensively for bountiful yields. For without access to land, the dream of boosting output will remain a mirage. Expectedly, therefore, the first object of CBN's intervention in the oil palm sector was facilitating access to land for stakeholders involved in cultivating oil palm plantations or interested in extending their already existing portfolios.
Land, typically in Nigeria, is a big issue. We're working with the state governments to provide land. I'll give you an example. Ondo State government has committed to providing 350,000 hectares of land to about 10 different players, over a 3-year period. We want to also thank the state governments that provided land, Edo, Cross River Delta, so many states that we are working with, and also the banks that have been participating in this scheme. We encourage them to give more land. Places like Niger, Taraba, who have huge, vast land under their control, so that we can get in private sector players to come and, cultivate this land. And indeed, the state will benefit, not only providing the farmers, the players paying their taxes, but also, providing jobs for their people.
To complement the easier access to land that it has been facilitating, the CBN has also been accelerating gateway to funding to clear such land so that they can be cultivated with ease. This measure is being implemented particularly in those areas of the oil palm belt in the country which are thickly forested and where land clearing attracts prohibitive costs.
We recently released what you call the private sector-led accelerated agricultural development scheme, which is really to improve land clearing. I'm sure you're aware that land clearing in the south is almost 3 times more expensive than land clearing in the north, and that has been a big issue that has hampered agricultural development in the country. But we've provided an intervention addressed at that, so private sector players can go to the state government, work with them, get an agricultural title for the land, or the central bank will provide funding over a long-term period to open this land, bring in farmers, and then repayment will be from whatever is cultivated from those farms. So oil palm development mixed with the PADS, offers our citizens a very, very good opportunity, not just for oil palm, but for other crops, to contribute to national development. And indeed, oil palm is an agric, is the new oil. It provides you on a per liter basis or on a per barrel basis, fantastic returns.
Vital as they are, the availability of large expanses of land and facilitating much easier access to them by funding cheaper channels of clearing such land alone are not enough to guarantee the increased output of a crop. For after having acquired and cleared the land, more funds are necessary and needed to cultivate the crops of interest on it. And since access to funding is the ultimate solution provider to practically every endeavor, the provision of this compelling need has been the masterstroke applied by the CBN to revitalize the oil palm sector. In collaboration with the Bankers Committee and by availing stakeholders in the oil palm sector access to funding from its own battery of concessionary single-digit credit windows, the CBN is already breathing a new lease of life into the sector.
Traditionally, the central bank doesn't deal with individuals, it deals with banks. And oil palm being a long gestation crop, unlike maize and rice that typically you cultivate maybe 2-3 times a year, oil palm takes between 3 and 5 years. So banks traditionally shy away from funding long gestation crops because they're quite risky. So what we've done is, as a central bank, we've created an intervention targeted at long gestation crops. We use the real sector support facility. Typically, those who have plantations in excess of 10,000, 5,000, 20,000 hectares will approach any of the deposit money banks. And then CBN will provide funding at a concessionary rate over a long tenure. Unlike maize, where the funding is for a 6-month cycle, we go as much as between 5, 7, and in certain circumstances, 10 years of funding, so that you not only have time to, do the seedlings, to cultivate the plantation, and indeed also bring in equipment for you to be able to do the mill. So we have long-term funding at concessionary rates for those who are interested, and I mean the uptake has been quite very, very good. So that's the funding model we have for the oil palm development project. Smallholder farmers really contribute to the oil palm development initiative. So maintenance of their existing plantations will also provide funding through our AXMIS, which is for small businesses, to enable them, maintain the plantations that they have. We're also funding the mills. We've put in we've provided quite a lot of funding for the mills, over 25 billion at last count, into mills scattered across the different parts of the country, to ensure that, the value addition is kept in-house. So you cultivate, you mill, and then offtake with our manufacturing initiatives with the big players, the likes of Unilever, Colgate, taking these products, and then value addition can stay in country, and then economic output is guaranteed. And all this put together will contribute to economic development and growth for our people.
The framework of the CBN Intervention program is very good. It is an ingenious framework. A lot of work went into that program. I can tell you for free that I'm all very, very happy with the CBN Intervention and the framework. Because without that framework, I don't know what we'll be doing now. But that framework has given us hope. Has given us hope that we have a future.
Okomu Oil PLC, one of the leading integrated palm oil production companies in Nigeria, is a beneficiary of the CBN intervention funds pumped into the oil palm sector to boost output and close the unusually wide demand gap that has been exerting pressure on Nigeria's foreign reserves through sustained importation of palm oil. Courtesy of the funding model of the CBN intervention, Okomu's factory and oil palm plantation in Edo State have become a beehive of activities as production of palm oil and harvesting of bunches of ripe oil palm nuts to service production are going on at a frenetic pace. What's more, Okomu is set to expand its milling capacity utilizing the funds it accessed through the financial interventions of the CBN.
We're very grateful that the government, and more specifically the CBN, has decided that agriculture is a very important part of the whole economy, it certainly has assisted our company. We've been very, very privileged to be able to get loans from the CBN. In fact, we had a CAX loan previously, and we currently have a DCRR loan. And we've applied again for another CAX loan, which we have received recently as well. So working with the CBN has been very, very, very helpful for us. And in general, the ability for us to apply for the loans has not been a problem.
The vastly improved access to funding through the financial interventions of the CBN has also positively impacted farmers, especially in their ability to strengthen the drive towards achieving improved output of oil palm and its derivatives.
The CBN has tried in these last 3 years to help farmers access our seeds, so that when they give farmers the credit facilities, farmers are able to come to buy seeds from us. So that's one of the part of the collaboration. So it means that we have to then up our game by producing more seeds, and then we'll now have higher demand for seeds than ever before. So that's one way to say that there's been some impact in intervention. We also now have more people getting interested in oil palm. more and more people are getting interested, particularly among the smallholders who really, I would say, control over 70% of the market, or over 70% that was required in the country.
Thank God for central bank intervention. Be helping us to surpass all the hurdles that ordinarily would not allow us to make any progress, any meaningful progress at that. From funding, you can imagine what the farmer goes through to get funding. Because oil palm is very vast. Very vast. So even to maintain the plantation, there's a lot of money to maintain it. Without intervention, where do you go from?
The funds are available, working through any of the deposit money banks. So funding is not the issue. Traditionally, deposit money banks shy away from long gestation crops. They prefer to do, either maize or rice. That is almost like a 4-month cycle. But with the right stakeholder engagement and set a target for 10% of their loan portfolio for them to go into agric. So working with all the stakeholders on in the ecosystem, the funding is available. Private sector players who are serious and genuine in doing this cultivation can come to the central bank, working through their banks. They'll get the funding easily. It's a priority for us. We'll ensure you get the funding easily, and then we'll monitor, how you go through the cultivation and your mill construction. We even go much more than that. We try as much as possible to ensure that you get, because some of the components might be imported for the mill, ensuring that you get FX to be able to, bring in this equipment quickly, so that there's no mismatch between when you cultivate and when the mill is up.
Definitely the intervention by the CBN in our respect has helped us to increase our production and to assist the country in removing, to a greater or lesser extent, the shortfall in the oil that we have currently. It has helped us. I can give you the specifics with no problem. The first CAX loan that we enjoyed from the CBN assisted us in developing and making our current oil mill bigger and better. So we increased our throughput. And the DCRR loan that we are now currently having, that helped us to increase and to plant nearly 10,000 hectares of palm, which we wouldn't have been able to do if we had not received that loan. So that immediately tells you that we are increasing our production. And the CAX loan that we are now applying for will be used in part to fund one of the 2 new oil mills that we will be putting up in order to process. So there's the increase in production that we are looking at. So in the next 2 to 3 years, we would effectively now be able to double our crude palm oil production going forward.
Welcome back. Well, that's how far we can go in the first episode of the mini-series on the CBN interventions in the oil palm subsector. Your views and comments on this edition of the program, as well as others aired previously, are welcome. You can relay them to us by logging on to the CBN website. It's www.cbn.gov.ng, or call us on the CBN Contact Center on 0700-225-5226. We shall surely attend to you. Join us again, same time next week, when we shall bring you the second episode of the mini-series from where we stopped on this edition of the program. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.